birds fly over the trees, yeah, they're looking down at me, and they say everything that I want to hear. Oh, 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 oh.
Some of you probably already know Anchee Min arrived here in the U.S. in 1984 at the age of 27, penniless, speaking practically no English, under tremendous pressure from her family at home in China to succeed, and facing incredible obstacles in building a new life in America. Writing was not the first thing on her mind. Survival was. But if there was anything that she learned growing up during the violent trauma of China's Cultural Revolution, it was determination and getting back up after failure. As she simply notes, I jumped the hurdles in front of me. Her books make for very compelling reading because she simply tells it the way she sees it, whether it's commenting on China or America. In her first stunning memoir, Red Azalea, she paints an incredibly complex picture of what it meant to be a woman in communist China. Mao's revolution promised to overturn centuries of belief in the worthlessness of women and to deliver sexual equality. And indeed, Red Azalea, it refers to an opera written to celebrate women's new role in China. But Mao ended up ruling through terror with a party dominated by men. The opera, which Anchee was groomed to star in, was never produced, and there was no liberation. Her new beautifully written memoir, The Cooked Seed, carries her story of unflinching honesty to her life as an American immigrant. One important theme in the book is raising a daughter in America against a backdrop of rampant consumerism and questionable moral values. While she is trying to teach her daughter about hard work, her daughter is getting a much different impression about what it takes to get ahead. It has been called the book that Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother meant to be. Anchee describes as a turning point an overtly racist incident that occurred while she was with her young daughter in a park. She says that she instantly knew that her calling was to help Americans understand China. She writes that she knew that hate comes from not knowing each other. She had been taught to hate Americans growing up, and that only through knowledge could these barriers be broken down. In addition to her 2 memoirs, she went on to write 6 books featuring China's prominent women from ancient to modern times, a literary portrait gallery that includes the wife of Mao Zedong and the Empress Dowager. Through the women of China, she weaves an incredibly rich tapestry of where China has been and where it might be headed. It's easy for us all to look at another culture and paint it in stark terms. Oh, China's fabulous. Oh, it's so exotic. It's beautiful. There's all that history. Or, oh my gosh, China's terrible. Look what they do to their women, their environment. Oh my gosh, they're minorities. But it's much harder to actually seek a multi-dimensional understanding. This is what Anchee Min offers us here tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, let me warmly welcome to the stage Ron Hogan and our very, very special guest, best-selling author, Anchee Min.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. I hope over the next half hour or 40 minutes or so that we'll draw out some of the great themes of your stories and your memoirs and share them with the audience. And to do that, I want to start by setting the stage for your first memoir, Red Azalea. As we talked a little bit about in the introduction, you grew up during Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution, and at an immediate level, for your family, this was a very rough time, as it was for many families, but for your family in particular, the Chinese Communist government had basically determined that your family was bourgeois, and that brought a very concrete stigma to your family as a result.
True and not true.
Okay.
To put it that way, my family was so average. That's why when I read Azalea and my friends and Chinese people said to me, "You're not Mao's daughter, you're so average." Because my father was working in a printing shop as a laborer, and my mother worked in a rain boots factory. And we were not the worst treated.
Okay.
So I think because of that, I go on the street and I would see neighbors getting denounced and their family looted. And our family was too poor. And Red Guards actually came, the students, they came and they can just knock on any door, open any door, come in to see they can loot anything. They actually came to my house and they only see diapers. And I don't see my mother during the daylight because she worked as an average Chinese woman and mother. She worked till 10 o'clock at night. So she would be, my kindergarten teacher would took me to the street. She says, "I'm gonna abandon you because your mother is taking advantage of me because I have 3 young children to attend. Your mother is late again." And it was always at that threatening moment I see my mother appear under the street light. And she come, and one day she came pick me up during the daylight. And I say, "Mama, you're here." And she says, "Oh, I'm so happy. My tuberculosis got so bad, and it's contagious. So I'm giving 3 months off to be with my kids." And she was wearing this mask. And she was so happy being with us. And she was wearing black colored clothes. And I say, "Why do you wear black?" And she says, "Oh, if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, I'll be in the right clothes." And that really caused me to have nightmares because I dream of she give me 3 siblings, asked me to take care of them. I was 5 years old. And I remember my grandmother died of age 49, my grandfather 55 to tuberculosis. So anyway, to answer your question, just during the Cultural Revolution, our family was considered just like a middle and lower class, just average people.
And in the school program, you were indoctrinated into the Cultural Revolution very early. You write about how you were groomed by the party and inculcated with those values. And there was a point where one of your favorite teachers, you got called into essentially to denounce her.
Right. Well, it started because to save my mother always got herself in trouble. And she did not mean it, but she was called to almost denounce it as anti-Mao and was going to be reformed and put it away. And the incident was that she accidentally wiped her behind with a newspaper that's got Mao's picture on it. It was just we are poor, we couldn't afford toilet papers, and so we colored the newspaper. So I felt like I need to defend my mother. So my first writing was I wrote this letter that my mother was going to read to the public at her work unit. And my writing, and I said, it's not the crime to be honest, because I was sick, and I was not giving time to that's another incident I forgot to mention. It was that she was forced to do the propaganda leaflet. She was to write on the wax paper to be printed, and she accidentally to write "Long live Chairman Mao." She missed one word. It became turning to "No life to Chairman Mao." It should be "Long life to Chairman Mao." No life. 祝毛主席万寿无疆. 10,000 is like one stroke away from Wu means nothing. So 10,000 years to Mao became 0,000 years to Mao. And instantly she was, because the leaflet, it was everywhere, and my mother was instantly called as an anti-revolutionary, and she was put on the stage to be denounced, and I wrote this thing, and she read it. She says, It's not a crime that I wrote it because I was sick, I was blood pressure, I was dizzy, I was not allowed medical leave, and I, by mistake. It's somebody who's in charge who did not allow me to get a rest, who should be responsible. And my mother was forgiven. So I think I see that my writing saved my mother. So I went on to school to really be a very hard student. Also because I was not from a 3 generation of labor families. And these people have medical care, have like, they are the leading class in China. And we became second-class citizen, and so we don't have a medical care, we don't have anything, only the working class. So their kids was allowed to bully me. So my time went to schools, got beaten all the time. And I think I wrote it in the white ginger. That was very handy. So to escape the beating every day, the bullying, I became a zealot for Maoism because I discovered that only when I recite Mao poems, Mao quotations, the beating would stop. Because they would be called anti-Mao if they beat somebody who's reciting Mao. And I get on to start to enter competition. I was selected by school to win the competition for the school. And with each winning, I got 1 Mao button. And I have 800 of them. Again, it comes in handy later on when I become a Madam Mao and Mao. It's just so naturally, I'm filled with this thing. It's my childhood, it's my piano, it's my Beatles, it's my rock and roll. So I don't have to think, I can still recite just out of my head. So I became so good at the school, and so the teacher, the principal asked me to go on the stage to denounce my favorite teacher. It was to demonstrate that I can dedicate my life to the revolution, to liberate the world, the poor people in the world, especially in America. So we sacrifice our life so your kids can eat. Now, not only until I come to America, I learned that your parents tell you, finish your food on the plate, because people in China, children in China are starving. But anyway, so I was crying when I was denouncing my favorite teacher. And I was given a medal of certificate. It says, Mao's good child. And I took it home and expected my mother to hang it on the wall. To my surprise, not only my mother did not put that certificate on the wall, she said to me, if you do that again, I will disown you.
And one of the fascinating things about how deeply the revolution had gotten its hooks into you at that impressionable age is that, I mean, you actually seriously contemplated, well, geez, do I have to turn my mom in for for this?
Yes. When she said that, I did. Not only once. I found, well, I was 10 years old, 11 years old, and my mother took 4 of us walking from one end of Shanghai to the other end of Shanghai looking for children's books. There are bookstores, yes, but the only books is Mao's books. So today I think about North Korea. You know, they must have the same thing. In order to build this like a Mao as a cult, like a religious figure, and there's nothing else. So my mother was very frustrated. She came home, she says, can't be right. There's no children's book. And the 10-year-old me just turned to her and staring very coldly. I said, there's no need for children's book. Mao's book is the only book we need. And I remember my mother looking at me, was totally speechless and shocked. And I could sense she saw a monster coming out of me. But in the meantime, I was her protector.
And how did you get from that stage where you were being groomed as a perfect example of Mao's good girl to getting assigned to a work farm?
Oh, that's another thing, that 1/3 of China was assigned there. So the Chinese people, they put online, say a lot of bad things, shame on me. Not only I exposed what's in Red Azalea, it's okay to talk about among my own people, and it's not okay to share with the world. And my parents was very disturbed, especially when my mother was alive. And when they printed it in the Chinese newspaper, it says, Anchee Min took off her pants to let the Westerner fuck her. And, but anyway, I see a different things. To give a background about that labor camp, and I can only tell you what I know. We started because of America. The training, I would go as my schooling from, I was like 8 years old all the way to 18, was to prepare to deal with Americans' invasion. Because you guys were in Vietnam, and we believed that China was going to be next. At least that was our leader told us. And Mao says, that was in our textbook, was Mao's words. He says, 为人民而死，重于泰山. When you serve the people, when you die, your death was the weight of a mountain. The other way is as light as a feather. The man of humanity should refuse to preserve his life at the expense of that humanity. And Mao speaks beautifully. That's how he spellbound the entire nation. He's a poet, politician. He has this magic, charismatic quality. And he was my Chinese. So we followed him, and first we were sent, my school years were divided in 3 sections. One section was the army. I went to the Chinese Shanghai garrison, because I was the head of the Little Red Guard. And I would learn the moves, the combat moves, come back and teach my entire school. And the second section was to learn to be a peasant, so we can grow our rice and everything to support ourselves and support Vietnam. And so since like 14 years old, 15, we was assigned to live with peasants around Shanghai. The third one was to learn to be a worker, to make our own cottons, own textiles. So I worked 3 shifts. And first one, 3 factories. One was Shanghai Stapler Factory, and Shanghai number 7 textile factory. It's making T-shirts. And the other one is the Shanghai number 9 silk factory, make silk sheets. And what I remember the most was in the Shanghai garrison. Is it okay I show my moves?
Sure, please.
So I was asking the sponsor to make sure he has insurance covered. Every day, we would be giving a stick first. So we practice with the stick, we don't have enough guns. So the stick and the drill instructor says, 预备用枪. And then we have a American straw figures with American soldiers' helmet on it. So the basic move is to carry this thing and toward that mannequin, sa, 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 and just practice until it became second nature. And then I was taught to the second move is like you deal with the first soldier, and then the second US Marine probably will just come on this way. So you're gonna use the bottom of your gun when you do sa, and just yank him off, and in the meantime, you expect the other one from the behind, sa. So we do that move until it's very smooth move. Anyway. Oh, forget, I went off the track about the labor camp. It's hard to compress the history. It started with the Red Guards. Mao, now we know. Every Chinese know, you don't know. The Red Guards movement was a student movement. It's about democracy. It's about take over the school, make the school teach people instead of become more bourgeois. So it's the right of peasants to get an education. So education is not for the elite. Education is for the people, common people. So that we know We did not know. During that student movement, the Red Guards, Mao was the game player. The true purpose of the student movement was to help Mao to get rid of his political opponent, Vice President Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. Mao would never come out. Mao has no blood on his hands. He just talked to the students. 与天奋斗，其乐无穷；与地奋斗，其乐无穷；与人奋斗，其乐无穷。Translation: It's a pleasure to have fight with the heaven, pleasure to challenge the earth, pleasure to challenge the authority. We have the bourgeois authority in the headquarters is within the party. Don't be afraid. You have my support. And here go the student who just took out the vice chairman, Liu Shaoqi's family, beat him down, basically tortured him till later on he died, and he was criminated under a different name. And all 10 Mao's generals who helped him succeed the revolution all died the same way. And so we achieved that. I remember that moment. And you still see the picture. The Vice Chairman Liu Shaoqi was surrounded by these young students and who says, 打倒Liu Shaoqi, 打倒 authority, challenge. And he was showing the Chinese law book. He says, this is the law. I was voted as the vice president of the republic. Law. And with Mao's support, and the students succeeded, and the enemy was gone. Mao was the god of China, the reddest sun. Now, that's how my father got in trouble. My father's secret passion was astronomy, and he was punished because he taught a lesson on sunspots. And he was named Anti-Mao because Mao, how dare you say Mao's got a spots? The sun's got a spots. That's how my father published. But anyway, so after that goal was achieved, and students in the city, they were with weapons. The students start to get the weapon, attack the military compound. They try to get the weapon, and in Shanghai we see all these death. Anybody, the fractions can drag their opposition people and denounce them and to say that he's a criminal. And to the point, the young children in Shanghai, I was at the time, we having fun reading these posters about death sentence. He said, Wang convict Min is going to be sentenced to death, 立即执行, execution immediately. So you see blood, you see chaos, and it was that time, Mao says, it's time for our young people to get an education from a real peasant. The countryside is the real university. Now, this is how we were sent there, and there was a quota. Each family, you have 2 children, one got to be peasant, go to countryside. We've got 4, 2 of them needs to go. If you don't go, if I did not go, the neighborhood drama is not going to stop. The group that come and do the drama in front of your door says, congratulations, congratulations, going to the countryside until you go. If you don't go, if I didn't go, my sister was not going to get a job. It's going to, entire family is going to be in trouble. So I went to the labor camp that way, which is one of the millions.
Yeah. And what you found there is everything that you've just told us about how the lofty public ideals of the revolution were covering up power grabs and people jostling and pushing their enemies out of the way for their own advantage, that you saw that going on at the level of the work farm as well, that there was constant, you call it a lip and teeth war of people denouncing each other and constantly trying to undermine each other for their own political advantage.
Well, I would say it was more of sexual suppression. Mm-hmm. You have young people in the labor camp. Mine is near East China Sea. My camp's got 20,000 people, and the entire area's got about 100 to 200,000 youth aged from 17 to 23, and all hormone raging. We were sent to grow rice and cotton in the land that is so saturated with salt, there's nothing. So we built these military barracks, and then we just, one night, when my first few days, in the wheat, just shooting through the bed, it was just like a poking here. I woke up and I look, oh, it's got a wheat. It's so sharp, it's like a bamboo, just very, very, in the ancient time, they used it for making arrows. But they are so nasty. You just cut them, and the cotton is this big. It's never going to grow. And then the cotton we grow eventually just go to the paper, make a papers. It cannot be making clothes. But so it's the regulation. So how these people not get in trouble? It's to regulate their hormones. Now, we have no sex education. And I remember all I knew was I was 16 years old, and I mean, my hormone kicked in, was naturally curious about this issue. It's a band issue. I only know that always a girl sitting next to me needs my help, and I vaguely know she has some things with men. So we grew up knowing that if you have anything going on with a male, and you are going to be looked down at, you just ruined, your name just ruined. So we have make sure we stay away from the boys. And when I discovered a book from the looted books, it got my interest because the title was 从头到脚猴眼看人. Any Chinese here? Anybody who speaks Chinese? Okay, no. So it's translate from head to toe, looking from monkey's eye. And in it, it's a medical book. And the illustration, and it has one sentence really made an impression, caught my attention. It's called, the intercourse between a man and a woman is the highest form of revolutionary comradeship. So equipped with that, I went to the labor camp. Now, many years later, in 1994, I was on ABC, Good Morning America, being interviewed by Charlie Gibson. And he was asking me to talk about my love affair with a woman as the camp leader. And lots of American newspapers. And also I was put on the radio on homosexuality. And a psychiatrist came and announced and did the analyzing about homosexuality. I had no idea. I think it's how would I explain to somebody that this has nothing to do with homosexuality? It's just when a woman, females are forbidden to contact, to even look at the male, what do they do? Now this is what we do. We, at the labor camp, after the work, at night, we would go sent with weapons and to patrol in the fields, because we are East China Sea. We are not too far, quote unquote, from Taiwan. You know, Taiwan is coming down, and they're gonna send their spy in the sampan and come to China. And we were taught to identify them. So the way to identify them is to first look at their feet. If their toes are this way, as they will claim themselves as fishermen. The fishermen, they have toes going this way, like a fan. But if their toes looks like this has been in the leather shoes. Unfortunately, we never caught one Taiwanese spy. We caught our own comrades making out in the cotton fields. Now, these are the things that I could not forget. It drove me to write Red Azalea. The images of the 20 or 30 flashlight when we called, now. And you spot it. There you see a man, a young man, woman, crawling, looking for their underpants. And then the way to deal with it is the girl would be brought in to be worked on until she agreed that she was raped. And as you know, China's communist society is a crime-free society. What do we do with the rapist? The people's trial was held in the cafeteria. Should we give him death, execution, prison? Yes! It was people's will. This boy was dragged out because when the girl, after she read from the papers, and she was trembling, and the paper dropped on the floor, she denounced him. So you talk about denunciation, it's everywhere. And that's what we are living today. We can't talk about this, but that's everybody's living. So the girl watched her lover dragged out on the tractor. His life depends on his behavior. If he cooperates, he might be just prison, detention. If he refused to cooperate, it would be death, execution, on spot at that water tower. And the family will be billed a 20 cents for the price of the bullet. And it's called to kill a hen to shock the monkeys. That's how we, the monkeys, get controlled in our own lot. The problem was this girl, she used to work with me side by side, and her name is Little Green. She has the most beautiful voice, because as a farmer, as a laborer, it's very, very boring. Like during the busy season, 18 hours planting rice. And then you can't even get up by the end. And some entertainment is really help. So Little Green we kind of noticed that she would tie her braids. We all have our braids tied with brown color rubber band. She would tie it with a color rubber band. And she would put some flower on her underpants. And she would sing. We're picking all cottons, and when we were giving the pesticides to the cottons, and she would sing, 一条大河波浪翻，风吹稻花香两岸. About how beautiful our motherland is and the scent of rice flowers. And after that incident, after her lover was dragged out, she started to have strange behaviors. In the middle of the night, she would come and open everybody's mosquitoes. And so mosquito come in and we can't sleep. And I would wake up, cannot find my shoes. So, and she was incoherent, stopped singing, never washed herself. And then so eventually we sent to the leader, the company leader, who actually made that thing happen, the denunciation, everything. She was the head, and she decided to she and I escort Little Green to Shanghai Mental Hospital, where she was diagnosed as nervous breakdown. And she came back fat, because they fed her the medicine that make her so fat. She lost her willowy body and fat like the bear. We didn't really follow her, just let her wander around. And one day I was crossing the bridge. We had the man-made canal. We had a bridge. And the boatman says, "You come down. Are you from company number 7? I say, "Yes." She said, "Come down, identify the body." That was the first time I see a dead body. And it was face down. And the boat woman would just like flip it over, turn it over like an egg roll on a skillet. And its face is almost unrecognizable. That was Little Green. And when I came to America, I couldn't forget that face. Her beautiful singing, her face. And then also, because of this, it changed us. So thinking, what are we doing? And this company leader, who's the hardcore communist, she started to doubt. Now you think about her action that caused these 2 young people's life to be wasted. And she was the person who gave the condolence to the grandma of Little Green, who was an old-time opera singer. I give her 500 yen. And the old lady, dressed very very, you can see a sense of grace and dignity, and she was there. And she had no expression on her face. She took the money and she stood there. And from there on, nobody's gonna ever mention Little Green or any story like this. What bothered Yan, my company leader, was she says, you can see the Chinese people, this is a very common thing we're doing. It affects you. And she started questioning her authority. And I look at her, she shared with me her background, how she grew up, which was 3 generations, 1 room. Every night she would hear this voice. Her mother put out a scissor, she knew. Her mother hid a scissor under the pillow and tell her father, "Don't you dare. If you're gonna impregnate me again, I'm gonna poke you with the scissor." So to my friend, a marriage means rape. A man and woman together means rape. So when you see there is no book, this is what happened. People make their own assumption, conclusion, and so we started exchanging that. And she, in the meantime, she's falling in love with a company man, another man leader, that she can't express her emotion. So we got very close. We start coming into the mosquito. We can chat into the night and read her letters to her boyfriend. And I was the person go between, deliver the letters. And the man was so afraid to contact her and would not respond. And I would come and see her heartbroken faces. And I would start to make up stories about how this man wanted to kiss her and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually we got very close. So I would say by accident, I discovered the poetry of God. I got too far, sorry.
That's okay. No. Now, let's talk a little bit about how Red Azalea became the way that you got out of the work farm, out of the labor camp, but it wasn't really as if your situation improved marginally, but it was still a very hard spot to be in.
Would you like to know how I got out of the labor camp? I worked, make a long story short. I have to remind myself, make long story short. We're working. And I was carrying manure. It's like over 100 pounds, 150 pounds. And the problem is we use the tool, we all share, and nobody takes care of these tools. I use 2 buckets to go to the manure pit, get the manure, and carry with a bamboo stick. And one day, the string that holds the bucket snapped because nobody cleaned these tools. So the first thing to go was the strings. And I fell into the canal. And I was injured, and it was giving no break. Was not allowed to go to the clinic. That's why I love raining days. In America, I don't like. Lived in Chicago for 10 years, and I did not like where the man says, "Oh, the weather is bad because we have it raining." Now, in the labor camp, only raining day we're allowed. We have no Chinese New Year, no vacation, no sun, no weekends, nothing. Only raining days. I'm not talking about average rain. It has to rain so hard that the rice shoots we just planting flood back up. So I went to I have to get up 3 o'clock in the morning, walk to the labor camp clinic, and the line was so long, the doctor was so busy, he did not have time to have me undress. He would apply acupuncture over my clothes. And it worked magically at the beginning, but I went back to work, come back, it just lost its effect. And eventually I said, "Doctor, can you go deeper? Just acupuncture, do deeper." He said, "I am all the way in. You don't want to live. I told you to rest." I said, "I wanted to rest, but I did not have you did not issue me permission of rest slip." And the doctor went quiet because he was giving 3 slips a day to his patients. normally he would save it. One, for his boss, who might need to give a favor to somebody. Second one, to the tractor driver, who might to go to buy something he needs, like a salt and like a toilet paper and a soap. And the last one, he would save for a girl that he set his eyes on. So no patient's gonna get that slip. So I came back, and the platoon leader says, "You're just being lazy." And I was determined to prove myself. I thought I was going to die in the rice paddy to prove you I was not lazy. And in those days, I really prayed to have like a thunder, just come and kill me, so I could be a martyr, could be a hero. You know, we dream of being martyred since young. You know, when I practiced that military move, I was thinking about, you know, being sent to Vietnam to fight Americans and tie a grenade on my body and jumping to a group of American soldiers and blow them up, and myself, and my ashes will be wrapped in the beautiful red silk communist flag and be carried back, and my parents, friends will be sad but proud. And I would just want to die on my spot in the labor camp. And I didn't. And that day, it was 1976. Nobody knew Mao was dying. That Madam Mao was preparing to take over China as the chairman of the Communist Party. And she knew she was a woman, but she knew to use the tool of film to make a campaign movie to brainwash the nation. And she was looking for this ideal Miss Proletarian China face, her ideal, to put on the screen. And she sent talent scouts all over the nation to look for this face. And they came, these group of people came to my labor camp. And I remember I had been hungry because I was so slow. And my squad was working ahead of me. And the rule was, if I did not finish work, I would not get to eat. By the time I go to the cafeteria, everything's closed. We saw a van, a white-colored van, appeared on the horizon. In the labor camp, we never see anything. There's not even a tree. It's just vast East China Sea, the land, bare land. And there's a white van, and it stopped on the edge of the rice paddy, and a group of people in green-colored army coat stepped out. Now, you know these are important with the army coat. And they came walking toward us. And I was so hungry, and I just thought I would possibly have my dinner tonight because everybody else stopped and staring at them. So I was working so hard. So from the telescope's point of view, I was the only moving creature on the entire horizon. That was how I was discovered. And they came to us, and they start to talk to people. And they start to talk to me in Mandarin. I did not speak Mandarin. I speak Shanghainese. But I can read in Mandarin, so I kind of struggle. I remember they asked me the question, how to get to the headquarters. So I was telling them, you go straight, you turn right, and so such and such. And I found they are not really listening to me. They were just like measuring me, looking at me like with. Later on, I know Madam Mao had her standards. You gotta be 100 pounds, 125 pounds. And the height must be between 5'4" or 5'5" or 5'6". And you have to have a feature that's everything against the traditional Chinese beauty, which is, you see me, big eyes, big nose, high cheekbones, big mouth. And the traditional Chinese beauty is like slanting eyes and tiny little nose and cherry mouth and porcelain skin. And Madam Mao I had a weather-beaten skin. So 2 weeks later, I got this notice, order. It says Anchee Min to be shipped to the Shanghai Film Studio for screen test. And at the bottom of the letter, on the top, the headquarters, the labor camp wrote to the company leader, says, make sure, watch out for the reactions of the other comrades when Anchee Min's going. And that was my first taste of going stardom on the tractor to Shanghai, be the screen, the face of China. And only when I landed there, I see thousands and thousands, beautiful people, and they all look alike, big eyes, you know. And I had to go back and forth for about 6 times competition. So when I came to America, I see you're like Miss America, Miss Universe, kind of similar, except the measurements the opposite. You got a wavy body. We have like a column, so can carry manure. And yeah, it was in the film studio. They asked me if I know how to perform. I did not know how to perform, and I found that the people through this 6 times competition, people who perform so well, they know acting, they were eliminated. Why? Because when you know how to act, you have a cultural background. You have read books, you know, you hear stories, and that's politically. Madam Mao is looking for politically reliable people. It's more important. So I got up, and then they say, what do you do? And I said, I don't know anything. I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to do anything, perform. But I do know how to recite Mao quotations and Mao poems. They say, show us. Now, I want to show you this one, because that's my foreshadowing, because I'm going to use that to fool the Americans. But I'm not going to give away. Remind me to give that. So I'm going to show you. You mind?
Oh, please.
Okay. It's about Mao's poem about the winter flower, the Mayflower. And it's about Communist Party as a small flower, but it will spread the revolution until the whole world is liberated. And the Communist Party and Mao himself will be hiding among the blossoming flowers and smile with delight. 风雨送春归，飞雪迎春到。已是悬崖百丈冰，犹有花枝俏。It blossoms over the cliff and the snow. 俏也不真真，只把春来到，待到山花烂漫时，他在丛中笑。So, thank you. This one got me selected. And then the instructor says, screen test, ready, set, action. Anchee Min, Comrade Min, you drink water. So I drink water, I start drinking, and the director says, cut. See here? Miss Bourgeoisie. The correct way to drink water is to grab the mug, gobble it down in one breath, and wipe your mouth with both of your sleeves. No, that I'm familiar with, because you plant rice, it's a pig shit. So only way to wipe your sweat is with this one. So I did it naturally. However, in the middle of this, making this training, screen test and everything, we heard the funeral music. 4 o'clock, September 9th, 1976. Mao died. And I remember that moment that everybody crying, is supposed to cry. And I found I have no tears. How shall I hide that so I would not be called an anti-Mao? So I go like this. Many people, October 8th, Madam Mao was overthrown. 2 months later, I was denounced as Madam Mao's political trash. For the next 8 years, I was punished. Make a long story short, I was not allowed to go to school, and my salary would be fixed as a borrowed labor from the labor camp for $5 a month for the rest of my life. And I was very depressed. And that was the purpose. It's a Chinese style of punishment. It's to drive you, to isolate you so you can go and kill yourself. And I made a friend at the film studio, a young friend. She's 16 years old. She will, in the future, in a few years, she will become a sex symbol of Asia after she played the role in Bertolucci's Oscar-winning movie, The Last Emperor. Her name is Joan Chen. And she was told by the party boss not to talk to me. And she made an effort to talk to me, but her parents were warned. Her grandmother was warned. Eventually, she agreed not to talk to me. And after the movie, she went to America. I'm getting myself ahead.
No, please. So to set the stage for what comes next is that Joan Chen, eventually, you and she are writing each other from China and the States, and she's the one who helps you decide that your hope is in America, that you have to get out of China. And we'll circle back to that part of the story, but before we get into that part of the story, I want to talk a little bit about how everything we've talked about in Red Azalea, you came to the United States in 1984, and Red Azalea came out about 8 or 9 years later.
8 years later.
8 years later. And when you arrived here in 1984, you didn't know any English. And that book comes out 8 years later. And I just want to talk about the way that not only did this story come out of you, but that you had gotten so proficient in English that you were able to write a powerful memoir like Red Azalea with less than a decade's worth of English, starting to learn English very late in life. So the transition of what prompted you to tell that story in English to begin with?
Well, then we have to connect to that.
Yeah,
How I
let's do
got here, is that okay?
Okay, please. Okay.
So Joan Chen and I start writing, because she feels secure enough to write from America to me. How are you? And I learned that she was a student in America and going to UCLA at the Northridge. And I thought, but you are a mega superstar in China. He says, well, I'm nobody here. I got to work my own tuition. I work, and all the Chinese students, they work to earn tuition. And I said, really? Can I be a student to work for tuition? Because if I don't know anything, I know how to work. I'm from the labor camp. And she says, well, you have to be a university student. Do you have any talent? Well, I don't have a talent, but I grew up painting Mao murals. So she said, maybe you should try art school. So that's how I tried the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She helped me contact that school for a catalog. So when the catalog came, that's interesting. First was my name. And I did not know, write my name in English, and I went to a wise man in the neighborhood who was about 75 years old, and he says, you should call yourself Angel. So Anchee Min. And when my daughter, American-born, 10 years old, I gave her my original copy of that application form with the name. I say, see, this is how your mother made it to America. Anchee Min. My daughter, Mom, it's Anchee Min. The second line was sex. I was supposed to circle female, but I did not know what sex meant. I consulted my dictionary. That's 1970 communist Chinese English dictionary. There is no word on sex. So I did not know whether I was male or female. So I took this application form to a friend who was a tour guide. I remember waiting for 4 hours after work, and 10 o'clock she showed up, and she was so tired. She said, okay, you go to school, middle school, Shanghai number 55 middle school, and just let me do it, or the rest of it. Okay, English writing, English language skill, poor, average, good, excellent, of course, excellent. I did not know what she was. So I got accepted by the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I think the thing is, it's so amazing. There's very fine Chinese painters from the art school. They all got rejected. Somebody like me, who had no training, and who got accepted, I think, because the Art Institute in America said I had a potential. Now, with that potential, the next thing was to get my passport. And since my status is mathematics trash, it's gonna be hard. And then, now, American people have problem with me lying. Some people who wrote online says Anchee Min lied her way to America. I said, you try without lying. My first stop was to lie to my communist boss. You go to America, who's helping you, and I need to ask you questions. I say, okay, you ready? Ready. What's the difference between Albania and America? Comrade, Secretary, I need your help and advice. I am so ignorant, I don't know the world as you know. What do you really mean? Difference. I mean, if America's got a proletarians, oh yes, of course, tons of proletarians. So are you a member of Communist Youth League of China? Yes. Do you intend to promote revolution in America to organize the proletarians in America? I said, yes, comrade. Good, make a good use of you. And 星星之火可以燎原, one tiny spark can light a whole wildfire of revolution in the West. You go. So I got my passport. The next stop was American visa consulate. Now, 1984, September, August, the line was so long, the words came out that only the PhD candidate would be qualified. And I was not even master's degree candidate. I was like a BA. And I figured out a way. I write a self-introduction, and I had my friend translate it. I recite the same way I recite the Mao poem. And I thought to myself, I would not let the consul general interrupt me. If he or she interrupt me, she's going to find out that I do not speak English. So when my name was called, a little before that, my parents were so afraid. And they just like, my father just said, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And I just feel like if I don't make it, I can kill myself anyway. So I went there. When my names were called, I get up, and if the same voice, I projecting myself, my name is Anchee Min. I would like to go to United States of America. I wanted to learn filmmaking. I wanted to be an artist. And I have to recite the whole thing, and I saw this person was looking at me. I thought, do not interrupt me. He's gonna interrupt me in this eyes. I remember the eyes, like a blue eyes, and like a really like reminds of me cat. I was losing my mind, and I recite faster and faster, faster. Eventually I finish, I go, and then the person say, okay. And I understand that, okay. Immediately, the curtain was closed on me. You never go to any consulate, they have a curtain. In China, they have to go on curtain, because for us, it's a life and death. If we don't get the visa, we'll go kill ourselves. So you don't let go. So the consulate, they invent this curtain. If they don't stop talking to you, and we moved to the next window with the Chinese secretary. And she's like, You think you fooled Americans? You're just lucky. Americans, they like people with crazy determination. Here you go. I got my visa slip, went home. Oh, my parents opened the door. They were leaning on each other. My mother was this way. And then my father was so pale. And they did not have the guts to ask me, did you get it? So eventually, when I broke down the news, my mother's knee just gave in. She was fall on the floor. She said, I can't see. I can't see. I can't see. And so I got the visa, and then my father says, you're going to get caught because you don't speak English. So I got on an airplane, and was the first time after I was landing in Seattle, transiting to Chicago, I saw below me was a star. It was like a Milky Way. And I thought, the Mao quotation entered my mind. It's the socialism is thriving day after day, and the capitalism is going down the drain day after day, and rotting. I said, this is how they rot? And after I came down and I followed people, I remember first impression of America. I had never seen so many different color of eyes and hair and clothes. So I followed them to the immigration, and then I was holding my passport. I was determined to say what I was going to project myself to say. And when next, I go in there, present my passport. So you welcome to America. You come here for schooling? I didn't understand. I understand. And I say, thank you very much. And then he says, I say, thank you. And I see the face going long. Huh? And I say, thank you very much. And he pointed. He take away my passport, he go, that room. I was escorted to the deportation room, where I waited for the translator to come. It was about 40 minutes, but for me, it was 4 years. And eventually, the translator who came, who speak accented Chinese, I broke down and I said, I did not have the fortune to die in China, and please give me a chance. Because my family owes so much. Just the ticket to here alone cost me 15 years of my salary. My feet are already on American soil. And this person says, Miss Min, you're going to be the burden of our society. You come to United for college and you don't speak a word of English. You can't explain that. I can't let you go. I'm sorry. And your English, it's obvious. And I say, give me a chance. I will manage. I will speak English, learn to speak English in 3 months. If I don't, I deport myself. And I just broke down. And this person stared at me and left the room abruptly. And she went out they had a discussion with the immigration officer. The two of them discovered a clause in my paper, I-20. It says, upon the arrival of the student, whose English is not sufficient, she'll be sent to the English program for 6 months at the University of Illinois Circle campus, tutorial English language. And so they come back, and that's how I got the job. I entered, and then there was...
Great. And so we'll find out a little bit about what happened next. I'm sure you all have plenty of questions about that, and we will get to that shortly. But for right now, in lieu of a reading, you said you have a different kind of performance that you would like to share with us tonight.
Oh, are we already ending?
It has gone much faster than...
We haven't talked about the cooked seed.
Yeah.
And the controversial, the part that my publisher want me to cut it. Did you notice that it's easy to, it's okay for me to expose the dark side of China? It is not okay to expose the dark side of America. And I really think that the publishers underestimated the readers of America. But you're going to prove to me anyway, so I'm going to follow his order. So I'm going to present you this writer's mind, a writer's brain that was carried in between my shoulders. And nowadays, I think the best way to show you my book is about this soundtrack that I carry in my head. It's in songs. One that American, it's a mix. It's a boiling pot. Peasant American, so I'm just going to show you. And excuse my voice. First of all, I'm not allowed to sing because I'm out of practice for all these years. For Chinese, it's shameful to present something that's not perfect to your guest. And I thought, what the heck? The Americans don't know the difference. Memory, hello in the moonlight. I kept dream of the old days. Life was beautiful then. 山淡淡的那个开花园，红艳艳。Burnt out ends of smoky days, the still cold smell of morning. 朋友来了，有好酒。When friends come, we treat them, we entertain them with wines. By friends, we mean Russia, North Korea, and Vietnam. And 若是那豺狼来了 when the wolf comes, you know who wolf is. 迎接他的有猎枪 Touch me, it's so easy to leave me along with the memory of my days in the sun. 朝霞映了在叮叮啷当当当当阳城到那里的湖上Don't cry for me, Argentina. There can be miracle. What you can do when you believe. Oh, you will when you believe. Thank you.
That was a really wonderful performance. Thank you for that. Now, so we're going to open up the floor to questions right now. And as I understand it, there are microphones, one there, and one up top there. And we encourage you, well, in fact, we insist upon you using the microphones because we need the sound levels. So I guess, let's see who's getting closest to the microphone. Somebody over there? Who has the first question? I guess we can, oh, here we go. So over here.
Thank you very much for coming. I kind of have two questions. And as a teacher of English as a second language, you have given me great encouragement for my students to potentially write in English a novel or whatever. what kind of advice would you give those students? That's the first question. The second question is, you mentioned writing some things that perhaps some people might not like, the dark side of America. I'm wondering if you've had any challenges or opposition in your memoirs. Have talked to a couple of writers in past years who have had such opposition to the point where they've even gotten sued because of somebody in their memoir didn't like what they wrote. And so how does one deal with that? That's my second question. Thank you very much.
Okay, the first question. Number one, get to know yourself. Get to know yourself really well. Only when you reach that, you achieve that, you can discover a voice that's totally uniquely yours. For me, I went through U-turns many times because I first read Azalea because I couldn't help it. It's my voice. The second book, I start to try to sound American. When I sound American, I lose myself. And also my material. Now I realize I have 5,000 years of Chinese history material there, and I try to sound like American, write about American. So it was only then I discovered the stuff that I have could be a style, the way I talk. For example, in China, you teach writing, like in America, you say, show, don't tell. But in China, teacher will not tell you that. In China, teacher says, try to understand the 风是通过树叶的抖动来展示它的形体的. The wind shows its body through trembling leaves. Show, don't tell. So it's the way of Chinese talking and responding. So like 2 weeks ago, I got this problem with the San Francisco Chinese community and at the bookstore. And they say the Chinese community gave me the author Anchee Min disapproval because she went out of the Chinese tradition. And I said, what's the tradition? I know the tradition. Tradition, as a woman, first you gotta shut up. Second, if you're really hurting, you hide your broken arm inside your sleeves. And that's not far from what I was taught by my grandmother. The women were grass, born to be stepped on, and that she had bound foot. That's why after years with her, I was embracing communism because our grandmother had bound feet. Naturally, anyway, we went far. Did I answer your question? Oh, what was your second question?
Oh, the second question was about when you're writing a memoir and running this opposition.
Yeah. Yes, of course, a lot. I guess, the publisher is looking for something edgy, but in a time you can't make an enemy. You can't make an enemy with the media, with your readers. Because I have met all kinds of readers. And one reader was telling me, he says, I love Chinese topics, but I just don't like to write written by somebody like you. I like it to be written by a Caucasian, somebody like a Prolus Buck. I mean, you would have expected me to take it, offensively, but I actually don't. I think she has a point. So I asked her, so why? She says, well, because you're naturally biased. It makes sense in a way. So it reminds me, like when you have a talk about Tibetan issues, I was asked often about Tibetan issues, and am I naturally biased? Because I was brainwashed. So I always tell people I'm the wrong person to ask about this issue, to say anything about it. The only thing I can tell you is that the best elementary school in Shanghai at that time, in the 60s and 70s, they dreaded to be drafted to Tibet to teach, to mandate elementary school education in Tibet. So they did not want to go there. And my neighbor from the number 3 houses, she told me that she was breaking down, leaving her family, everything. But she was the best elementary school teacher in Shanghai. Just a story.
So, next question. One over that way.
Yeah, she has another one. Will you give the microphone
Okay.
to her so you can?
Yeah.
No. You're the one, and then another
okay.
microphone to
Okay.
get ready. So we don't
First
have,
her. and
Yeah,
then-
you're
okay.
first. Sorry.
You briefly mentioned that your publishers were uncomfortable with some of the content in the cooked seed. I have actually read all of your books and enjoyed them all, and I have to say that was the harder one for me to read because it did take place on my own turf. Can you comment more on what they were uncomfortable with or what you were referencing?
Can you tell me? I'm being selfish. Excuse me. Can you tell me how do you feel offended? How did I offend you?
You know, I'm from Chicago.
Okay.
So I grew up in the suburbs, and then I lived in Chicago. So the parts of you're living in a,
Bridgeport?
a storage area.
Oh,
I
storage.
mean, at one point you were using, I think you were in one of those
Yeah,
storage
yeah.
areas for a little bit.
4311 South Halsted.
Right, off of, I mean, just the extreme poverty that you lived in as an immigrant student without resources, the work that you needed to do under the table paid minimal, like when you were doing the embroidery.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of, just the
Yeah, being a guinea
the
pig, medical
relationships,
child,
the
medicine
the
guinea
struggle
pig.
you went through across the board. Chicago hit home for me just because that's where I'm from.
Oh, I
like,
see.
I
no,
was there at the same
no.
time. So-
No, I think you don't want, it's my happiness. I mean, that room, storage room was so small, and $150 covers heat. It was my first time having my own space. You know, in China, I come in with 20 people share toilet. In the morning, traffic. You know, you gotta go like this. and even when you get your chance, you don't have the freedom to pull because it's a room. The one neighbor would be washing in the tub, washing sheets. The other neighbor cooking breakfast. The other neighbor brushing teeth. And I'm sitting here on toilet hoping my poo doesn't stink. That means when I got a chance to shit. But anyway, and that was my first happiness in that little room. And the only thing I have to bear was that when I rented, because there was storage, and the landlord did not have the sealed, the top was there's the open. And was another person who was like, mentally challenged. And when he had a diarrhea, the smell stink that just come over. That's the only thing I need to bear. And every day I went there, I know it's dangerous, so I put my key in between fingers or so and get off the subway. But for me, it was truly happiness. Thank you for mentioning that. You know, I'm so happy to be given a chance to explain that, that I get to be with myself, you know, my own thoughts. And about the book, and the other challenge was my ex-husband. I mean, my sister says, shame on you. You embarrass and you write this. Why do you have to expose the family? And I said, that's part of the immigrant. Immigrants, a lot of things you split. You get together because of financial difficulty. You use each other. You need each other. You depend on each other. And you divorce because of that. I divorced purely because of money. Because of my daughter's future. I don't want to live in a neighborhood where my daughter swing on the swing and play and people say, fuck you, Chinese. I don't want that. So I choose divorce for my daughter. And my publisher says, well, I don't think your ex-husband's gonna be happy. And he is, by the way, he's a professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Now, he is a different American dream. He says, you don't have, he's like, Anchee, you just go the hard way. So I'm gonna be, be the artist. And you see how America offers immigrant. The American dream takes different forms and shapes and colors. And so I sent it to him. I say, well, if you don't like it, we can change name. It's gonna be odd for Lorianne, because I wrote this book for my daughter, Lorianne. In the book, her father's name's like a David John instead of a Chigu John. And then my ex-husband, thought the portrait of him was so accurate, and he wrote a letter to me, asked me to pass it to my editor. He says, no name change. If you change name, no book. And my editor says, you're kidding me. I don't want to get a lawsuit. Come in. So I say, here's the letter. I just emailed the original. And I'm kind of happy. The only problem the person who had was his new wife. My ex-husband got married right after 6 months of divorce. And he married. And the wife said to me, I read the book. The man you write is not the man I know. I said, of course. He says, well, he treats you so terribly. He's an awful person, but I think you just did it for money, so you can sell your book to Americans. And I said, well, you got to understand that there's a difference when a man is in love or a man is not in love. He was not in love with me. He was in love with you. When an immigrant comes to this country, they leave a lot of things. The hardest thing to leave behind was their love of their lives. Anyway, you got to read the book.
Yeah. There was a question here, I believe.
I just want to say I had the pleasure of studying in Shanghai in 1994. I have 2 questions. Have you been back to China? And how do you think China is different now than the China of your youth?
Okay, thank you for going to China. Every American goes there as a good education for us. The difference is like you see me. I'm so average Chinese, and I think I really like, you all know Paula's Buck, right? Paula's Buck, she's my hero. She, in the 60s, she had a fight with a Chinese professor from Princeton, Professor John. They conducted the fight in the New York Times. The Chinese professor says, why did you pick, why can't you write something great about China? That the elite people, China's elite and 5% of it. And Brock says, thank you for pointing that out. That's precisely my point. My point is 95% of Chinese are peasants. I happen to representing the 90% of the Chinese. Same applied to me because I was nobody. I represent the majority of Chinese people, and you see, during the Cultural Revolution, we basically were deprived, stripped away, robbed from chances, from options. And once that gave it to us, tiny little window opens. We feel the oxygen coming, and we just go, we just mouthful, lungful, we can make the best use of it. And I think what I achieved in America, you just multiply millions, and that energy that makes today's China, it's all because we went through what I just told you, the story of Yan, story of Little Green, story of my mother, and we suffer. So to me, it's a logic that China is developing in such a speed. And of course, the terrible thing is nobody is gonna mention that for us, the telephone, the elephant. See, I say telephone. My daughter says, Mom, you have Chinese accent, not Chinese accident. Things that we couldn't forget, that issues, I think China is coming up now. Actually was last week. Something in China went viral about this American filmmaker named Oliver Stone blasting a Chinese film festival. Now, he and the other director who directed the Gravity were invited for that festival because the authority of China thought they are pro-China. And they publicly claimed that they're pro-China, that we are China's friends. The Oliver Stone said that. And the other guy was saying to the audience, the Chinese just love it. That love generated, I don't know how many, 30 million or some million, the box cash for the Gravity, because he put a little detail. When the American astronaut failed, floating in the air, it's where they ended, it was the Chinese station. You see that movie? Mm-hmm. That was on purpose. That was kissing the Chinese ass. That was for the money. And then Oliver Stone says, for God's sake, you people, All these development, you need to face, you don't have the guts to face your own history. You asked me to come here and do anything I wanted to make a Chinese movie. My favorite thing I wanted to make is make a movie out of Red Azalea by Anchee Min. And I was repeatedly told no, 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 and no. And I'm mad about that you people are just doing all these things. And he turned around to the director. He says, well, you know what you're doing, right? And so that the Chinese journalists, they are sitting down there and say, finally, Oliver Stone did what we said, what we wanted to say and dare not to say. So they describe the whole thing and not mention Red Azalea, and then they just say in a very ambiguous wording, but all the Chinese understood. So it's ongoing. The economy is bring the freedom and the thoughts, and China is coming its own way, want to counter its past. That's for two things. One is that we understand the difficulty. Stabilize China, the order in China is more important than anything else. We understand that. But it should not be the excuse to white out history. And we understand that Mao his poetry has to be on the Tiananmen Square, the gate of Tiananmen, because if you let him down, he is the founding father of the Communist Party, the ruling party. It's like you denounce Lincoln, where that put America. So even though you holding his flag, you doing something else totally against. If Mao had been alive, he would have jumped out of the coffin. And Deng Xiaoping said a very Chinese way, said, we don't talk about anything politics, we just Bai Mao, He Mao. Whichever catches mouse. White cat, black-colored cat. Whichever catches mouse is a good cat. So that's how China is going underneath, but we have to honor our ancestors. Mao was happy to be that. But what people deal with every day, I just give you one little story about my neighbor, Mr. Tong. His death was very, I bet, every day the family is with. I saw it with my own eyes. And during the Cultural Revolution, he was a small-time vendor, Mr. Tong. He was about 70 years old. And he was made to sweep the street to humiliate himself in the neighborhood. And you would think that the people with poverty, they are kind-hearted, the children are kind. No, children are the worst, the vicious, nasty bunches at my time. They try to make a job hard for Mr. Tong. So every day they kill, they torture the cats and catch the cats and throw in the well, the neighborhood well. And the Mr. Tong had to bend over the well to fish up the cat. And only next day he found another one there. And then one day I was looking out the window, I saw Mr. Tong was bending over that well for so long he didn't straighten up his back. Something was wrong. So I went to his next door, next room, not next door. I talked to the daughter. I said, your father, something's wrong. And I saw the daughter just put down her thing. She just ran all the way to the well and get her father up. Her father was having a stroke. And she was carrying the father, walking toward back to the house, which is facing my window. And all of a sudden, she stopped. Because all the windows are opening, they're watching. And she was forced to make a decision that she needs to cut off her relationship with the anti-revolutionary. She has to show that she was with Mao. So she stopped, let the father down, and walked alone back home. And I remember the expression on her face. She tried to make a smile, but not quite making it. That grin. And her father died on the spot. And many times, years later, we try to comfort her, says, your dad is going to die anyway because no hospital is going to treat her because she's a capitalist. But that doesn't console her and her family, what she did. And it just bothered her for the rest of her life. And it bothers me for the teachers that I denounced, that I went, after 20 years, come back from America, and I apologized to the teacher I say, I denounced you and I apologize. He says, who are you? I don't remember I ever had a student like you. I know she remembered me. I deserved it. But it's a very hard pill to swallow. I still, it's here. I can't quite swallow it. In a way, everybody dealing with this thing, I think that makes China. We want to make sure the Cultural Revolution would not happen again. So when people are giving that kind of power, China has hope.
I think we have time for one more question if somebody has one.
I think one over there, next to you.
Hi, Anchee Min. Thank you for coming here. I just recently finished reading your book, The Cooked Seed, and I wanted to thank you for writing that and for sharing your story. And I guess one of the things that I kept thinking about as I read the book is that first I'd remind myself that it was actually memories, that it was memoirs, because some of the things you described are so difficult to read that it almost reads like fiction sometimes. I had to remind myself consciously that these were things that happened to you. And I guess one of the questions I was wondering was how you got the courage to keep going after so many things happened to you and you faced so many struggles in your life. What gave you the strength to keep going and to continue to make the difficult decisions and to, you know, try different things even though people were telling you not to and things like that? That was one of the things that stuck out to me the most. And what kind of advice would you give to somebody else who was in your situation?
You don't, and nobody here needs my advice because you're American, you're already American. And that's what I got from American culture. It's the self-worth, self-worthiness. And I think, well, you do a great job. Sometimes you've overdone it. You know, America, I am beautiful, no matter what you say. And I think that thing, it was lacking in me. And only American gave me that back. And so with the very English sentences that I understood from Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He's my favorite guy. Because when you did not speak language, every word that frightens you, and only a gentle person who says, we tie my shoe. And he says, you know, you're sitting there, you know, I want you to know, the best gift you can give to anybody is your honest self. And I understood that, upon understanding that sentence, I just broke down crying. The 27-year-old me, because I never thought that I myself, the honest self, would be worth anything, not mentioned as a gift to anybody. So years later, when Mr. Rogers I was going to visit where she, I think was Rochester, where he lived. He was going to present me in a little festival, and we had a communication. And I wanted to express myself, the thank that give to him that he enlightened me, give me the self-confidence, and to not for now, just to overcome everything on my path. Because when you have respect for yourself and the worthiness, that you have dignity, you have integrity. And I want to thank him. I couldn't come up with anything, so I consulted Lorianne, who was 7 years old, and I said, can you help your mommy? Sure. So she had my postcard, and then she just drew a picture of American flag and colored it and then dotted it in and sent it to Mr. Rogers, and I got a note back. And he says, it means I feel so good that my work touched a beautiful soul like you. And I did not know he was dying of stomach cancer. He did not really get to present me because he was passing away at the time. And he died. And to me, he never died. He lived in my memory forever. You know, I share with you, and his memory of him goes on forever. I think that's what the story, the writing is about. It's the tissue that bound the society, bound you and I together. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was,
Okay.
we have one more question.
Last one.
Last one for sure.
In your book, The Cook's Seed, you talk a lot about how it's difficult to, since your own daughter didn't grow up with what you did, to bridge that generational cultural gap. I was wondering about how in China, how the young people who didn't grow up in the Cultural Revolution, how parents there are dealing with that type of cultural gap, but with their own children.
Well, basically, the young children tell their parents, F off. I think you get the same here. They have their own dilemma, and they just think that we're all losers. Of course I told my daughter, my daughter, I'm a loser. I mean, you grow up how many years? 16 to 26 to 36. I did not have a boy of my own age took my hand. That was my dream. Never talk about love. I said, tell my daughter, what are you doing Saturday, Friday evening at home? You go out and get to know the male animal. And I don't get to be a tiger mother at home. And I have a little issue. I think I'm a part of the Chinese community that I feel that we stress so much on survival. You open a restaurant and then laundry, you get it back. But here, you don't get reward. And also, life is not about just survival. It's more about, and so I drag my daughter to a lot of volunteer works and movies like A Doctor Without Borders. And I really like these Americans, the worldly and the views. So I kind of always scare her to that way. And I've got a tiger dad at home, my husband. He was a former US Marine, a Vietnam vet, and teaches English. That's kind of a weird combination. And at our wedding night, he says, I hope I don't have flashbacks. And I said, I hope I don't have flashbacks. And the way he deals with our daughters, like, I tell you to be home Saturday, 10 o'clock. And my daughter showed up at 10:15. It's not because of her, because she was at the friend's house, American mother drives, you just like it's a party, birthday party, you just be on the dot, punching. So they arrived late, and the friend's mother was so nice, and the car was still going, and said, you go there, and then you open the door, then we drive away. And my husband just would not open the door. And he had 3 locks. All these with PTSD people, he's a 30% how do you say that? Disability. Yeah. He refused to admit that until I wrote a letter counting all these, like a midnight, like 2 o'clock patrol in the yard. He said, somebody's in the yard. How do you know? Well, because cricket is not singing. And all kinds of things. So I wrote it, and I say, I say it's a torture. I'm just basically dramatizing. I actually was getting used to it. And he took a really nice American man. He took it so literally, he thought he had a problem, and he went to the VA. And he got diagnosed, 30%. And then with my daughter, I knew. Although I think he is extreme on that point. He had 3 locks. He has to sleep downstairs in the bunker-like. And he has 3 locks. The last one is deadlock. And I tried to get doctor to tell him, you got to open the lock because you have a stroke. I will not be able to help you. But that night, he kind of took it to pretty, and he said, I'm going to go open the door. So I had to make a decision. Be with my daughter to open the door, I stick with my husband. And I did what Chinese women supposed to do. I stick with my husband, and my daughter was crying outside. And eventually, she went downstairs and went to the friend's, the mother, drove her away, spent a night at the friend's house, and being told, you have a dysfunctional family. And daughter comes back and crying and saying that, and then my husband says, don't worry about me going crazy because I'm already there. Anyway, I had a good night. And thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you.
So much, everyone.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye now.